Welcome to Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is going to be talking about how we are as a sexual being from the moment we're born until the moment we die. When I first started teaching this, I thought of a story that I remembered from high school. And when I was in high school, a woman came to me where we worked one morning, and she was completely freaked out. She was actually twitching, as I recall. When we asked what was wrong, she told us she had spotted her grandparents in the kitchen that morning and had seen her grandfather grab her grandmother and kiss her like a man kisses a woman. And from this, she inferred that they had sex. She was freaking out. I recalled thinking this was probably likely, hence her existence, but it had never occurred to me that they would still be at it at their age. I looked at my grandparents a little differently then, but it never bothered me. I've learned since then that this bothers most people. From the moment we are born, what we must all realize in order to understand this chapter is that we are all sexual beings from the moment we're born until the moment we die. Penises and vaginas don't wait to develop until we're in our teens and then fall off when we become parents or grandparents. At least I hope not. In truth, sonograms, like my youngest boy, have seen developing boys with little baby erections. It's adorable. What about if your baby is touching down there? Little babies, when born, play with their bodies, all parts of their bodies. As we know, some parts of our bodies are more fun to play with than others, and we learn that pretty early on. I must admit, I have found it very amusing when my sons have sat in the bathtub, giggling with their favorite toy in their hand. Getting them to put on diapers has been a challenge, however. During early childhood, children start to become interested in playing with things other than themselves. Many parents react very strongly when they find their child playing with or looking at another child's genitals. They feel that it's too early for their child to be interested in sex. It should not be seen that way. A child isn't interested in sex, they're just learning. For many years, a child only sees what they have. It's natural curiosity for a child to be fascinated when they see something new dangling or something missing on another child. It is important to note that the child learn in society, and we need to have them learn that those body parts should not be exposed in public, but that they are to be special places, or the child may embarrass themselves later on. Not to mention the fact that we want to make sure that they know that no adult is allowed to play with their parts either. But as far as them playing with themselves, where's the harm? They're just being curious and they're trying to learn. Curiosity does not wane as a child begins school, but most children realize that by this age it should remain hidden. The questions about sex do not wane, however. The parents' reaction to these questions can influence a child's feelings about sex, as well as their willingness to ask questions of their own parents, as we will discuss at the end of term, but you can read the addendum for this chapter early if you wish. Realize that children are thinking about sex before they are physically able to experience it, and you want them to understand what it is before they rush ahead of you. Now we're really getting going. I'm guessing that we have all gone through puberty and we remember what it was about. Most of what we remember is the secondary sex characteristics: breasts, facial hair, pubic hair, growth, change in voice. These things take time and are a sign of a person experiencing puberty. Girls also experience menarche or first menstruation. How a girl is prepared for or introduced to this can affect her feelings about menstruation and her body for the rest of her life. The same is true about a boy's introduction to his first nocturnal emission. In contrast, fewer boys are made aware of this. Both are a sign that they are capable of reproduction and should be treated as a blessing, with the consequences we discussed in chapters 5 through 7. I'm sure you don't remember those. By about this time, approximately the age of 10, children are beginning to show sexual attraction. Adolescence is the time when this attraction is often realized, and it can be a very difficult time for both sexes. Many experience sexual activity through masturbation, but many turn to others, starting with petting and often to leading to sexual intercourse. A child's family support and guidance can determine how quickly one leads to the other. Remember that adolescence is not an easy time. Rebellion is at its highest point, and confidence in oneself is at its lowest. This often leads to sexual activity before a teenager is psychologically prepared, and why a first sexual experience is not often a valued experience for many. So, what about when you're an adult? Many of you are now in the period called emerging adulthood, the single adult time period. The age range is the average, not the reality. People are now often delaying marriage and no longer have the parental controls past generations had. During this time, many people engage in casual sex, one night stands, or practice serial monogamy. This is the period when many people prepare themselves for long term commitment, like marriage. Obviously, much of that preparation involves finding someone you wish to marry. We have all heard that after marriage, the frequency of sexual relations decreases. While there is evidence to back that up, in truth, married couples tend to have more sex than unmarried people, since there's less time spent looking for a partner. Cohabitation is also an increasingly popular way to get to know a person before marriage, and I agree with it. However, it's not helping lower the divorce rate. It does not appear to be a factor in extramarital affairs. Why do people cheat? Whitehurst has brought up two well supported reasons: opportunity and alienation. People don't stray away when they're getting everything they need in a relationship, and they don't stray if they can't find it elsewhere. But my parents are that age. Do middle aged people have sex? Obviously, since they have already had children and no longer have the need to procreate, they must cease this vile activity, especially if you are the child they've already had. This is obviously false. Many students hate hearing this, but I feel it is my responsibility to tell you. Your parents probably have sex, perhaps a lot of sex, and they like it. But they're old. Even after a marriage ends, it should not stop a person from finding another person to share their life with. There are physical changes which accompany aging, but none prevent enjoyment of sex. Menopause may cause decreased vaginal lubrication, but that's what KY jelly is for. Men may take a little bit longer than they did when they were young, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The only thing that prevents older people from enjoying sex is the thought that they're not supposed to want sex. And this goes for people over 60 as well. It is society that tells us we must stop when we retire. But when we retire, we have all the time we want to have sex. But really, barring medical problems, people who enjoyed and felt good about sex when they were young enjoy and feel good about sex when they're older. A few years ago, I was talking to my grandfather about weather and health and grandparent stuff when he asked for my advice on a problem he was having. His problem was that his new girlfriend's father would not allow them to go on dates or spend time alone. She was 65, her father was 90. I told him I didn't know how to help him since my father had lost control over my behavior when I turned 18. Somehow they resolved the issue, and the majority of my family giggled because they couldn't imagine what the harm would be if they held hands while watching TV. I could see where her father's concern came from. He knew what he was thinking at 90 and suspected my 70-year-old grandfather of the same thoughts. A few years later, my grandfather sadly passed away. When my father looked at the flowers they were sent, he couldn't help but notice that the arrangements that came from one particular florist were considerably larger than the rest. As he had ordered flowers from there, he asked the florist why this was. The florist admitted that my grandfather was his best customer. He ordered a dozen red roses for his girlfriend every week for the 10 years they were together. In addition, before he died, he put a standing order at the florist to send her a dozen roses every week for a year. After that, she was to find someone new to be with. Most people hear that story and give a big, oh, how sweet. And he was a very, very sweet man. But I look back to the point of my story. This confirmed it for me. The father's fears were justified, and I am happy to hear he was enjoying life. We are sexual beings from the moment we're born into the moment we die. And let's not forget that.